Lech Lecha. Where do you start? Where do you begin? Where do you end? We were introduced to Avram Avinu at the end of last week's Parsha. Avram is born. He already went through the Kivshan Ha'esh. He's already destroyed his father's Avodah Zarah shop. Nimrod tried to kill him in the Kivshan Ha'esh. And the Rebbeinu Shalom, we don't have yet the Rebbeinu Shalom there, but Terach decides we're going to get out of here. And Terach takes Avram, or Terach and Avram. They take Sarah, Avram's wife. They take Lot, who's the son of Haran, who died in the Kivshan Ha'esh. So just to get the family here, Terach is Avram's father. Terach had three sons, Haran, Nachor, and Avram. Haran died in the Kivshan Ha'esh. After Avram came out, Nimrod threw him in there, and he died in the Kivshan Ha'esh. We talked about why he died in the Kivshan Ha'esh. Before Avram Avinu was thrown into the Kivshan Ha'esh, Nimrod asked Haran, so are you with Avram or you're with my Avodah Zarah? And Haran said, let's see what happens. If Avram comes out of the Kivshan Ha'esh, I'm on his team. If he gets burnt in the Kivshan Ha'esh, I'm with you. Avram Avinu walked out of the Kivshan Ha'esh. So Nimrod said, you're with Avram? He said, yeah, I'm with Avram. He came out of the Kivshan Ha'esh. So Nimrod threw him into the Kivshan Ha'esh. And he was consumed. He died. So we talked about this, the dangers. We talked about it before Rosh Hashanah, the dangers of being a Beinoni, Kluyim V'Omdim, the fence straddler, the fair-weathered fan. If the Yankees are winning, I'm a Yankee fan. If the Tigers are winning, I'm a Tiger fan. Whoever wins, I'm a fan of theirs. A dangerous place to be in Ruchnius. And this is one of the lessons we get. Avram went in there, dedicated to Rebbeinu Shalom. He walked out of the fire. And someone that's straddling the fence, he says, look, if he wins, I'm with him. If you win, I'm with you. He comes out, he doesn't get out of the fight. That's Haran. There's another interesting thing about Haran. The Sfasemis talks about this. Haran is the father of Lot. Just going back to the family for a moment. Haran dies in the Kivshan Ha'esh. But before Haran died in the Kivshan Ha'esh, he had children. One of his children was Lot, meaning Lot is Avram's nephew. Haran, Nachor, Avram are brothers. And Haran, Avram's brother, has a son, Lot. So Avram is Lot's uncle. Haran also has two daughters. He has a daughter by the name of Milcah, and he has a daughter by the name of Yiska. By the way, these are psukim at the end of last week's Parsha. No. Haran has a son, Lot, has two daughters, Milcah and Yiska. Milcah marries Nachor, Haran's brother. So Nachor married his niece, Milcah. Avram married Yiska. Avram married Sarah. Rashi tells us that Sarah and Yiska are the same person. So let's look at this now. Haran has three children that we know of. Lot means Avram's nephew. Milcah, Avram's niece. That niece marries Avram's other brother, Nachor. So Nachor married his niece. Haran has another daughter, Yiska, who's Sarah. And Avram Avinu marries Sarah. So Avram Avinu married his niece. Sarah is Avram Avinu's niece. And Lot is Avram Avinu's nephew. Lot and Sarah are brothers and sisters. So we know that as we go through Parshas. Lot and Sarah are brothers and sisters. Avram is Lot's uncle, and Avram is Sarah's uncle, and Avram married his niece Sarah. Haran dies in the Kivshan Ha'esh. Before he dies in the Kivshan Ha'esh, he has Lot. Lot is going to have a little story ahead of us in next week's Parsha, where there's going to be a whole Maisa there with Lot and his daughters. Lot and his daughters, Ammon, Moab. Lot is going to have relations with his daughters, and two nations will come out, Ammon and Moab. From Moab comes Rus. Rus, however the halacha allowed it, Gemara discusses this, Rus was able to convert. Rus HaMoaviyah becomes the great Baba of David HaMelech. David HaMelech is Mashiach ben David. So let's trace this back now. Mashiach ben David comes from Rus, who comes from Moab, who comes from this Maisa of Light with his daughter, and Light comes from Haran. So Haran is the progenitor of the Melech HaMashiach. If you look at it, depending what branch you're looking at. But there's one branch here, Haran has Lot and his daughter give birth to Moab. Moab has Rus, David HaMelech. David HaMelech, Mashiach Tzidkenu. Mashiach Tzidkenu, one branch from which he comes is Haran. So the Sfas Emes says that the reason why Haran was Zeicha to be one of the branches that will bring Mashiach into the world is because he died al Kiddush Hashem. He's the first person in the history of the world that died to sanctify God's name. Now, we have this issue. He didn't do it l'shem shamayim. He was a fence straddler. When he got thrown into the fire, he died in the fire. But the fact of the matter is, when Nimrod came over to him before Avram was thrown into the fire, Nimrod asked him, "Who are you with?" And he said, "Look, if Avram Avinu comes out of that fire, I'm with him." Now, Nimrod could have killed him right then and there. He could have thrown him into the Kivshan Eish right then and there with Avram, but he didn't. He only threw Avram in. So at the moment that Haran said, if Avram comes out, I'm with him, he was doing something, and he said something that endangered his life for the Rebbeinu Shalom. He wasn't sure, but he said, if Avram Avinu comes out of there, I'm with him. He put his life in danger for the possibility that God is God. So in history, he's really the first person that died al Kiddush Hashem, not in the best Kiddush Hashem, but he died al Kiddush Hashem without any Goysa Kavanas. For that, the Sfas Emes says he was Zeicha to be one of the branches that brings Mashiach Tzidkenu to the world. And that idea in the Sfas Emes has many ramifications, which we don't need to go into today. There's so much, Parshas Lech, Lecha. Okay. Sfas Emes 1. The first Aliyah, Avram and Sarah. The Baruch Shalom says, Lech lecha mi'atzem relat me'savicha l'oretz asher. Just like every year, Parshas Parshas, I say over the first Rashi in Chumash, why did the Torah begin with Bereshis Bar Lekim? Why didn't it just start with mitzvahs? To teach us that Eretz Yisrael belongs to us. We've read that Rashi. I read the Rashi in Parshas Bo. I read the Rashi in Parshas HaChodesh. We do that Rashi at least 3 times a year. Whenever we come to Parshas Lech Lecha, I read this another Sfas Emes in Parshas Lech Lecha. It's not in your handout. It's a short Sfas Emes. But listen closely, Rabbi Isa. I say this every year, Parshas Lech Lecha come out, and I say the same thing. Listen closely, Rabbi Isa. The Ramban, we learned the Ramban introduction to Chamisha Chumshei Torah. We were doing it for 2 or 3 weeks. We finished it basically yesterday. The Ramban. Rav Olbi says, as we mentioned yesterday, that for Hadracha, if a Ben Torah wants to be madrik himself, be a Ben Torah, he gives a list of things that you have to learn. One of them is Chamisha Chumshei Torah with Rashi Ramban. Rambana Yesodei Emunah. Ramban asks a kasha. He says, Noah came onto the world stage in last week's parsha. He was born at the end of Parshas Parshas. But he comes onto the world stage last week's parsha. Eila told us Noah. Noah ish tzaddik. Tamim haya b'doraisa. Es alekim es halech Noah. Ay, 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 how many stars and stripes he got. Before we learn about anything, that the world is in a state of hashchasa, the world is perverted, the world is immoral. Before we learn anything about Noah is going to save the world, which we talked about last week, he brought into the teva the world and brought out the best of the world. It wasn't a new world. We talked about that last week, the Maral. Be it as it may, Noach gets this stars and stripes introduction before the story starts. Eila told us Noach is tzaddik. Tamaya b'dayoisa. Es Elokim es halech Noach. And then we learn about the world is corrupt and the world is perverted. And then God talks to Noach. And this makes sense. It's a perfect order. Noach is a tzaddik. The world is perverted. Therefore, God talks to Noach and says, you need to build a teva. Makes perfect chronological sense. We get introduced to Noach. We get introduced to the perversion of the world. And now I know why God's talking to Noach. Good. What happens here? This week's Parsha. Vayomer Hashem al Avram, Lech lecha me'artzecha. The Rebbeinu Shalom says to Avram, leave Haran and go to a place that I'm going to show you. Why is God talking to Avram? What did Avram do? If you just read the psukim at the end of last week's Parsha, Terach had Avram, Nochar, and Haran. Haran had Lot, Milcah, and Yiscah. Nochar married Milcah. Avram married Sarai, and they decided to leave Ur Kasdim, and they went to Haran. Gewaltig. Vayom Elokim, Vayom Hashem al Avram. And Hashem is already talking to Avram, you need to leave and go to Eretz Canaan. Who is this Avram Avinu? So we say to ourselves, I looked in Rashi last week's parasha, and it says, Ur Kasdim is telling us the story of the Kivshan Ha'esh. Avram Avinu went into the Kivshan Ha'esh, and he came out, and he's a very holy person. He believes in God. It doesn't say that in the Psukim. Those are Medrashim. And the Medrashim are Avada, Tyrus Hashem, Tamima, it's Tyrus Emes. But where's the introduction? We didn't leave Noach's introduction to a Medrash. The Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe Rabbeinu, this is what I want you to write. Eila told us Noach is sad, as Lokim is halach Noach, but that's how Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it down, because God told him. God didn't leave the qualifications of Noach to a Medrash. He put it in the Sefer Torah. Ramban asks, why didn't God write into the Sefer Torah? Eila told us Avram. Avram is tzaddik. Tamu ha'bedayoisa. Holach nichnas v'yotzim min kivshan ha'esh. Whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom would have decided to write. And then Vayomer Hashem al Avram lech lecha me'artzecha. You great tzaddik Avram, I don't want you to stay here. I want you to go to a different land. Why is Avram undeserving of any kind of introduction? Plutzlum, Pitom, we know nothing about him. No introduction, and God's telling him you have to go somewhere else. Why? Why does he have to go somewhere else? Who is he? What did he do? That's Ramban's kasha. So the Sfas Emes says as follows. Ramban hiksha shenem lech lecha b'li sheniska mikoydem chibase. The Ramban asks, it says Lech lecha Avram, and it doesn't say anything about why God's talking to Avram. Why does God choose Avram? Why does God love Avram? Why does God can he give Avram Eretz Yisrael? Wow, what exactly did he do already? Uvezoya Hakadosh. The Sfas Emes quotes the Zoya Hakadosh. Nira ki ze atzmai hashevach sheshama ze hamayim lech lecha shenema Hashem yisparach l'chol anoshim tamid. The Zohar Kodesh says, "K'moshe Nema, K'moshe Amru Vayle Inen the Shinsa B'Chureim, V'Avrom Avinu Shoma V'Kibo." The Zohar Kodesh has a lashon, Vayle Inun the Shinsa B'Chureim. Woe to the people that have sleep in their nostrils. In other words, woe to the people that are snoring. There are people that go through life and they don't hear God talking to them because they're walking and talking and looking and seeing and scratching their heads, but they're fast asleep. They are snoring. And the Zohar Kodesh says, woe to those people who walk around and there's air coming out of their nostrils. They're snoring. They're actually asleep. We talked a little about this, not the same way, but the famous Rambam about Kiyah Shofar and Rosh Hashanah, Uri Yashenu Mishinaschem. The purpose of the Kiyah Shofar is for all those people who are walking around asleep to wake up already. So the Zohar HaKadosh says, woe to the people who are going through life and they're actually fast asleep snoring. What happened, the Zohar HaKadosh says? Avram Avinu heard Lech Lecha. Shenema Ma'ashem Yisparach L'chol Anoshim Tamid. I'm going to say this 3 times, and then I'll translate in English. Uvezoy HaKadosh Nireh. Ki ze atzmai hashevach sheshoma ze hamayim Lech Lecha shenema Ma'ashem Yisparach L'chol Anoshim Tamid. Uvezoy HaKadosh Nireh ki ze atzmai hashevach sheshoma ze hamayim Lech Lecha shenema Ma'ashem Yisparach L'chol Anoshim Tamid. Uvezoy HaKadosh Nireh ki ze atzmai hashevach sheshoma ze hamayim Lech Lecha shenema Ma'ashem Yisparach L'chol Anoshim Tamid. There is a constant voice coming out of heaven that says Lech Lecha. It's constant. The Rabbanu Shalom constantly has a kol coming out of Shemayim, Lech Lecha. Me'ashem Yisparach L'chol Ha'anoshim Tamid. Some people hear it and some people don't. We have all over Shas, Pirkei Avos, talks about Bas Kol Yotzes. These heavenly voices are coming out and saying, Bas Kol Yotzes. The Zohar HaKadosh says there's a voice that comes out constantly and it's telling everybody, Lech Lecha, get out of Golus, go to Eretz Yisrael. But woe to the people who are snoring while they're alive. Now, if a person's snoring in his bed and I say, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, he can't hear me, he's snoring. He's sleeping and he can't hear me above his snoring. He can't hear me. Unless I physically go over to him and shake him hard and wake him up and say, Lech Lecha. And then it may be he'll say to me, Loz me up. It's a big chutzpah, you woke me up. I'm going back to sleep. Loz me up. So the Ramban, the answer to Ramban's kasha, according to the Zohar HaKadosh, the way the Sfas Emes explains it, is Avram Avinu needs no introduction, no stars and stripes. The introduction is Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. And what did Avram do? He picked up and he left. What does that tell me about Avram Avinu? That unlike so many other people, he heard it. That's the praise. What the Rabbeinu Shalom did for Noach. Noach is tzaddik, tam hoy b'doyroisav, v'salikim is halach Noach, oy, 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 oy. How many of us would love the Rabbeinu Shalom to say that about us? Oh, Eila told us Lubling ish tzaddik, tamim hoya b'doyroisav, esralikim his halach Lubling. Ay, 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 what we would give to have such a pasuk in the Torah written about us. There's a better pasuk to be written in the Torah. Vayomer Hashem el Lubling, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, mi'vleilatcha, mi'beis avicha, el ha'aretz asher erecha, and then Lubling does it. That's a greater praise than the Lubling ish tzaddik, tam haya b'doyroisav, es elokim is halach Lubling. Noach got his stars and stripes. Avram got his stars and stripes. We don't have to tell you Avram is a tzaddik. We don't have to tell you Avram is tamim haya b'doyroisav. We don't have to tell you Eselikim his halech Avram. We don't have to tell you those things. God said Lech Lecha, and guess what? This is a man that's not fast asleep. This is a man that's listening. His ears are open. He heard Lech Lecha and he went. And he didn't say, Rabbeinu Shalom, Lozmir up. I'm enjoying life here in Haran. Rabbeinu Shalom, I'd like to go back to sleep and back to my snoring. He heard it. He heard the words Lech Lecha, and he acted upon it. There are no bigger stars and stripes than that. Lozmir up with the Noach ish tzaddik, tam haya b'doyroisav, so Kim is Noach. Lozmir up with all the names. The Goyin Hador, the Tzaddik Hador, the Rosh Hashiva, the Ram, that Lozmir up with all the names. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, and Avram went. You can't praise a person greater than that. And so the Zohar says, woe to the people that don't hear this, because they're snoring through life. Umemela, the Swasema says, Nikra kadibur elav, ki halala nimtza miyuchad lishmaya. There was nobody else that heard. Nobody else wanted to listen. Rakhu. Only Avram Avinu heard and listened. This itself is the greatest praise you can give Avram Avinu. He was ready. He heard the Lech Lecha. He was ready to accept the Lech Lecha. He didn't give me Baba Mises. When the time came to leave, God said, leave. He didn't give me Baba Mises. My grandchildren don't know how to talk Hebrew. And my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, Avram Avinu, you're going to leave behind your land. You're going to leave behind your birthplace. You're going to leave back, you're going to leave your family, your culture, all your comfort, everything's going to be left behind. You're going to leave it. Lech Lecha, you're going to leave. And I'm going to create a new Lecha for you. There's a new land, a new culture, a new family waiting for you in Eretz Yisrael. Avraham Avinu was ready to do that. We learn the Das Tvunos, we're always talking about God's talking to us. Some of us don't want to hear what he has to say because it's uncomfortable. So we go back to snoring. Some of us hear what he has to say and have a dialogue with God. But God, it's not the right time. But God, it's a little inconvenient. But God, I'm not ready yet. Maybe soon. Or all the other things that we've talked about. You want to have that dialogue with God? Gesundheit. You want to go back to sleep and snooze? Gesundheit. But there's a yesod here. God's talking to us. And one of the things he's saying is always Lech Lecha. We want to hear it, or we want to tune it out. And again, briefly, I'll give the marshal, whenever we talk about Baskel, I'll give this marshal. Rav Grona Zechron Lebracha, who spent time in Camp Morris when I was in Camp Morris, Chaim Berlin camp, many, many years ago. He used to speak at Shalosh Shudas. And one time at Shalosh Shudas, he wanted to make this point, and we're talking about the days of the Beatles. Was Shabbos Shalosh Shudas, and he was in the middle of his drasha on Shabbos. Said, does everybody hear the Beatle music going through this room right now? Of course, at Shabbos Kodesh, Shalosh Shudas, nobody has a radio, nobody hears any Beatle music. He said, Rav Grona Zechron said, everybody should know that there's Beatle music going through this room right now. If you had a radio here and you turned it on and it had a battery in it and you tuned it to the right station, you would hear the Beatle music because they're coming through the room now, those sound waves. You just have to have the vessel, the keli, to be able to hear the waves going through the room. So you need first to come in, you need first to have the radio. You need to put the battery in. You need to turn it on. You need to pull that antenna up on those old type of portable radios. You need to turn it on. And you need to get to the right station. If you don't do one of those things, the battery's not in there, you don't turn it on, you don't get to the right station, you won't hear the Beatle music. So he said, if you want to hear a Baskel, people say, oh, I don't hear any Baskels. Where's the Baskel? I don't hear Baskel that's Yotzis Meha, Chorev Omeres, El Boyne Shaltayr, Oilem Lapias Shaltayr, all these Baskels, I don't hear any of them. Well, first of all, did you put the battery into your neshama radio? Second, did you pull up the antenna? Third of all, did you even bother to turn on your neshama radio? And fourth of all, did you tune in to the right station to hear the Baskel? You need to tune into the message if you want to hear the message. People shut off their radios or turn the station because what they're listening to is not comfortable. So they turn it on to Mordechai Ben David music or whatever else they want to listen to. But they don't want to hear Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha, Rebbeinu Shalom Lozmir Upshan with the Lech Lecha. Or Rebbeinu Shalom Soon. It'll be time soon. Soon. Can you come back to me in 5 years? We can have a further discussion about this. Zok the Ramban, Zok the Svasemes, Zok the Zohar Kodesh, that this is the greatest praise for Avraham Avinu. Lozmir up with the Noachish Tzaddik, Tamaya B'Dayroisa, Vesalikim Esalech Noach. Avraham Avinu is a Groiser Rosh Hashiva, he's a Tzaddik Ador, he's a Gadol Ador, he's a this, he's a that, he's that. Lozmir up. I don't need any titles for my Avraham Avinu. My Avraham Avinu is my Avraham Avinu because he had open ears till Lech Lecha. And then when he heard it, he didn't go back to snooze. He didn't. That is Avraham Avinu. That is Sarah. They heard it, they didn't tune it out, and they went. There's no greater way to introduce Avraham Avinu. That's how Avraham Avinu. The Rosh Hashanah is talking. We don't know he's talking. He's screaming already to the people in Chutz La'aretz. He's screaming. He's yelling. He's shouting. Allah Gutta radical liberal Jews. They wanted to join yesterday the BLM protest in Philadelphia, the Jewish liberal radicals. We want to march with the BLM, our Charusas here in Philadelphia. And the BLMs beat them up. We don't want Jews joining us here. We don't even care if you're radical liberal Jews who want to march with us BLMers. We don't want you here. We hate you Jews. But the radical liberal Jews will still vote in a crazy way. Because the radical agenda to the liberal person, including Nebuch, the liberal Jew, is so perverted that it's so important that we get a crazy person who is senile to be president, and a woman to be vice president who's more radical than we even realize, because these people will, Baruch Hashem, Layaleinu, Baruch Hashem, they're going to protect a woman's right to abort a fetus right before birth. And Baruch Hashem, they're going to protect same-sex marriages. And Baruch Hashem, all the perversions will be protected under the scope of the right to privacy and the right to liberty. This is all so much more important than anything else in the world. But what about the fact that this person has a history? He was Obama's vice president. They sold out Eretz Yisrael in the Iranian deal. They voted, whether they voted against or they abstained in the Security Council about Eretz Yisrael. They were mashchis for 8 years. So many important things for Eretz Yisrael. And here you have a person that's so good to Eretz Yisrael. He wants to be good to Eretz Yisrael. Yesterday he signed an order. Finally, that if a child is born in Jerusalem, you can put Israel as the birthplace of the child on the passport. Trump signed that order yesterday, finally. Things, the Golan, things that we have to have Hakaras HaTorah for, basic things. So I know liberal radicals in America that I know, Jewish people, and they daven in the finest modern Orthodox synagogues. And they give a lot of money to Israel, and they send their kids here on the 3-month, whatever that thing is called, to get to know Israel better. And they send their kids back here to Eretz Yisrael to study in Hebrew University. And when you tell them, but if you love Eretz Yisrael so much, it's illogical to vote for the Democrats. They say, no. We hear Eretz Yisrael, but we're Americans first. And America, we need to protect the gays, the queers, the lesbians, abortion. This is the thing that's so important to us. Eretz Yisrael will survive. Don't worry about it. But we need to protect the lesbians and the gays. And I feel I need to make a point. I don't know if we're going to get to Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. We'll do it quickly. I feel compelled to make a point here. And I'm going to make this point, irrespective, as I've made other points, irrespective of whether there are people that are going to be uncomfortable with what I'm going to say, and then there are people that get so uncomfortable they say we can't come to your shir anymore. I say, okay, can't come to shir, can't come to shir. Look, I can't. We spoke about yesterday, man in search of truth. We're in search of truth. We're not saying that we have the truth, but we're in search of truth. Let's search for the truth. Let's discuss what the truth is. If it's not correct, people can correct me. People can we can talk about it. If your best response to what I say is, I don't want to listen to you anymore, say that. That's an acceptable response too. But I'm going to live my 120 years that the Rebbe Shalom gives me, whatever that may be, whether you want to listen to me, you don't want to listen to me, the Rebbe Shalom gives me a certain amount of time, and I'm a man in search of truth. There's a tremendous Hakoras HaTorah that Chazal teach us that we owe to Gentile rulers. And we're sensitive to that. For those of us who are listening, and we learned Masech Midas together, Har HaBayis is 500 amas by 500 amas. The eastern gate to the Har HaBayis is called Shushan Habira. The western gate to the Har HaBayis is called Kipunus. The northern gate to the Har HaBayis is called Tedi. The two southern gates are called Cholder. Why is the eastern gate to the Har HaBayis called Shushan Habira? Gemara Menachos Tzadik Ches. According to one reason, it's to show praise and Hakoras HaTorah to the Persians. Shushan Habir was the capital of Persia, and it was with the permission of the Persians, who then ruled Eretz Yisrael. It was with the permission of the Persian government that we were able to build the second Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, the eastern gate was not only called Shushan Habira, but there was sort of a picture of Shushan Habira above the eastern gate to the Har HaBayis. And this is Hakoras HaTorah to the Persian government. We learned in Chumash, we learned it also in Yeshaya, same Gemara Menachos Daf Tzadik Ches. Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to Paro for the very last time he's ever going to see him. And he's warning him about the night of the 15th and Makos Bechoros. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paro, "V'yordu chol avodecha elai v'hishtachavu li lemor." All on that night, when death is running through the streets of Mitzrayim, all of your servants will come running, looking for me, and they will bow to me, and they will tell me, take these people out of Mitzrayim. The words, "V'yordu chol avodecha elai," all of your servants will come looking for me and will tell me to get out. Moshe Rabbeinu was careful not to say, you, Paro, will come looking for me and you will bow to me and tell me to take the people out. Right? Paro in pajamas. But that's what happened. The little children's song had to say, the Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night, Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night. And we know that happened. Paro was running through the streets looking for Moshe and to tell him, get out. Moshe knew this was going to happen. The whole thing is in a nevuah. On the night of the 15th, there'll be mass death, and you will come searching for me. You will bow to me. He knew this, but he was careful. He had covered for Paro, the Gemara says in Menachos Tzadik Ches. He was careful. Paro is a Jewish baby killer. He killed Jewish babies. He tortured Jewish men and women. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu say, you machutza, if you know what's going to happen, you're going to come crawling and begging to me? You don't talk like that. You can say to Paro, your servants will come begging to me that I should leave. But Moshe would not say, and he knew it was going to happen, Moshe would not say, you will come crawling and begging to me, because he's talking to Paro the king, and you don't talk to Paro the king, the Jewish baby killer, unless you speak with his heads of derech eretz. I'm not saying over here Azoya. I'm not saying over here Rabbi Kiva Eigen. It's not some little piece of Mishnah Brura that some people don't know about. It's not Ich weiß was Amar Shah somewhere. It's a Gemara in Menachos Daf Tzadik Ches Amud Aleph. It's a Rashi in Parshas Boy. It's a Rashi in Sefer Malachim, where it says that Eliyahu ran after Achav in order to show him covet. It's all over the place. This is not Torah Shebenista. That's some kind of hidden secret that I'm revealing to you. It's Gemaras and Rashi. Came this week a rabbi, a Ram, His name is Lichtenstein. And he has a yichus. His name is Lichtenstein. And he gives an interview, and he says that President Trump is mentally disturbed, and he starts being mavaza him. And basically he's saying that Trump should not be president. He doesn't deserve to be president. This is a person that lives in Gush Etzion. So we would think Gush Etzion, the Dati Wumi community, they would understand how important Eretz Yisrael is. Rabbi said that's a whole drasha in itself, what's going on in the Dati Wumi community and their Ahavas Eretz Yisrael. Nish Pashit. So he comes out and he says these things. Trump's not a Jewish baby killer. He has Jewish grandchildren. He's done wonderful things for Eretz Yisrael. And you living in Gush Etzion. What's your business to say these things? Who are you talking to? You're telling American Jews not to vote for Trump. You live in Gush Etzion. We here in Eretz Yisrael have benefited greatly, both in security, financially, etc., from things that this president has done. Even if he was a Jewish baby killer, you don't talk like that about him. Moshe didn't talk about power that way. If Trump was a Jewish baby killer, you wouldn't talk about Trump this way. Rabbi Lichtenstein, if you're listening to me or you ever hear me, please explain to me why you can say those things when the Gemara in Menachos Tzaddik Ches and Rashi in a number of places prohibit such talk about a leader of a country who killed Jewish babies, let alone a leader of a country who has helped Eretz Yisrael tremendously. If you hear this or someone contacts you and asks you, maybe you can give us a Zoom and intrigue us and explain to us why you have the right to say this about a person who we owe Hakaras HaTorah to. Okay. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditcher for a minute or two. And I only say this because Hakaras HaTorah for Eretz Yisrael. We have to have Hakaras HaTorah that we're in Eretz Yisrael. We have to have Hakaras HaTorah for the people who make it possible for us to live in Eretz Yisrael, the soldiers, the government, v'hulu. We have to have Hakaras HaTorah. We have Hakaras HaTorah for Avraham Avinu and Sarah bringing the first Olim for making it possible for us to come here. We're making it, we're Baruch Hashem, we're Einik Lecha of Avraham and Sarah in the same way they heard the Lech Lecha, we hear the Lech Lecha. Hakaras HaTorah, Hakaras HaTorah, Hakaras HaTorah. It's such a fundamental, important concept about coming to Eretz Yisrael, living in Eretz Yisrael, that there are unfortunately people live in Eretz Yisrael that have completely no understanding of Hakaras HaTorah. Okay. Levi Yitzchak Barditcher, very quickly, he has a beautiful idea. I tried to, last week we spoke about a Maral, sometimes we speak about a Rav Kook on the Parsha, today we spoke a little about a Sfas Emes. I tried to use different sources to give people different ways to see how different Gedolim thought. So this is Rav Levi Yitzchak Barditcher, your handout. It's not from his Sefer. It's, again, last week we used Rav Weinrot's Sefer on explaining a Maral in a Parsha. Rav Weinrot also wrote this Sefer, La'or Kedushas Levi, where each week Rav Weinrot takes one Kedushas Levi and develops it in the Parsha. Okay, so what he's talking about is Avraham Avinu, when he came to Shem, his first stop in Shem, he built a Mizbeach. And it says he built a Mizbeach Lashem Nira Elo. This is, by the way, not part of your handout. It's the earlier part of Rav Weinrot's piece for this week's Parsha. The Ramban on that pasuk, Avraham Avinu came to Shem. He built a Mizbeach. The Ramban says, Ki hod l'Shem hanichbad v'zavach lo'izevach toid al shnei. This Mizbeach that Avraham Avinu built in Shem is because he wanted to thank the Ribono Shel Olam and bring a carbon to the Ribono Shel Olam for revealing himself, for the Ribono Shel Olam revealing himself to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu wanted to thank Hashem. Thank Hakaras HaTorah. Everybody get that? Hakaras HaTorah. When you're in Eretz Yisrael, you have Hakaras HaTorah. So Avraham Avinu is now in Eretz Yisrael. He's in Shem. So he has Hakaras HaTorah. The Ribono Shel Olam appeared to me, and he talked to me, and I want to build a Mizbeach and bring a carbon to him. Okay. So Levi Yitzchak Barditcher asks, and the Ramban hints at this, but Levi Barditcher asks it specifically. The Ribono Shel Olam spoke to Avraham Avinu while he was in Choron. At the beginning of the Parsha, Vayoyim Hashem al Avraham, Lecha mi'atzkom elan be'zavicha la'aretz asher eka. Avram Avinu, the Rosh Hashanah, we spoke about Svasemes. What did Avram Avinu do already that God speaking to him? We went through that. But God speaking to Avram Avinu, he's in Chutz La'aretz. And Rosh Hashanah says to Avram Avinu, leave here and go to Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Why didn't Avram Avinu build a Mizbeach? So you can tell me that Avram Avinu didn't build a Mizbeach because it wasn't Chutz La'aretz. There was no prohibition they're not building a Mizbeach in Chutz La'aretz. You can build a Mizbeach in Chutz La'aretz. The others built bomos, not necessarily always in Eretz Yisrael. This is before any Isser Chutz La'aretz. So if Avram Avinu wants to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for appearing to him and speaking to him and choosing him, why did this Mizbeach and this Korban wait until Shechem? Why didn't Avram Avinu build the Mizbeach the very first time God's talking to him, at least in the written Torah? And Avram Avinu built the Mizbeach right then and there as a thanks to Hashem for revealing himself to him and speaking with him. That's Reb Levi Yitzchak's question. So Levi Yitzchak says a very interesting answer, and it flows directly with what we spoke about this week, about both in the Rav Kook Shir and in other Shiurim, about the Torah, the purpose of the Torah. One of the purposes of the Torah is that we live in this world, the physical world, and we elevate the physical world to a higher place. Ramchal, elevate the guf. Rambam, we spoke about this week. If you sleep so that you can be stronger the next day to learn, you get olam haba when you sleep. If you're eating to be healthy so you can be an Oved Hashem, you're getting olam haba for your eating. If you're working, your work hours are that you can earn a living and support your wife and children and give tzedakah, you're getting olam haba while you're working. The Rambam, Hilchos Days. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev says that what Avram Avinu here is teaching us is this ability to take the physical blessings of this world and make them spiritual and make them holy is a special attribute only in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev explains, if you look at, excuse me for a moment, at the beginning of the parasha, the Rebbeinu Shalom appears to Avram Avinu. This is a beautiful diuk of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. Why did Avram Avinu build a Mizbeach as soon as he appeared to Avram Avinu? At the beginning of Parshas, Hashem says, "Vayom Hashem al Avram, Lecha me'artz u'me'olata be'savicha artz asher eka, ve'escha l'goy gadol, v'avarecha v'gad l'shmer v'yibracha." Avram Avinu is getting very nice blessings here. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great. Those are very nice things. Why didn't Avram Avinu respond to these beautiful blessings by building him his back right then and there and thanking Hashem for appearing to him, revealing himself to him, and giving him these wonderful blessings? He didn't do that. Rashi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev says, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Shahaderech gairemes shlosha dvorim. While a person's traveling, three things result usually that reduce a person. What three things reduce a person while he's traveling? At this period of a review. Person's traveling, it's difficult for him to reproduce, it's difficult for him to have children, even if he's traveling with his wife. If you're on a long trip, especially in those days, you're traveling on camel, that is not the time you want to travel on camel with a pregnant wife. It just, in those days, without the medical assistance and without hospitals, traveling by camel for miles and miles and kilometers from one point of the world to the other, and not the wisest thing to travel with a pregnant woman. So generally, travel in those days meant that a person is not going to have children during that period of time. This is a moment. And when you're busily traveling like Avram Avinu from point A to point B, from Haran to Eretz Yisrael, you're not going to be able to make that much money. You're going to be busy getting from point A to point B. That's not a time to make a lot of money. It's not a time for business deals. And it also reduces a person's name, so to speak. You can't make a name for yourself In order to make a name for yourself, you really need to be in a place and you do something great and people learn about you and your name gets out. But if you're treading from place to place to place to place to place to place, it's hard to develop a reputation. It's hard to start a family and it's hard to make money. So the Ribono Shel Olam gave Avram these brachas. Rashi said, don't worry, even while you're traveling, I will make you a great nation and I will bless you with money. V'agad l'shemecha, you're going to have a great reputation. Don't worry. So what are these brachas about? These chutz la'aretz brachas. I'm thinking over Bleiv Yitzchak Berditchev, it's in your handout. What are these brachas that Avram Avinu was getting while he's in chutz la'aretz? The Ribono Shel Olam saying to him, don't worry about losing things. You're not going to lose out on money. You're not going to lose out on your reputation. You're not going to lose out on starting a family during your trek to Eretz Yisrael. During your aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to worry. You're not going to lose. When Avram Avinu built the Mizbeach, it says in Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Aleph, Vayeva Hashem al Avram, Vayomer l'zar'acha et teines ha'aretz hazois. Now, when they're talking about a whole new bracha, Bleiv Yitzchak Berditchev says, the Ribono Shel Olam is not telling him, don't worry, you won't lose what you have. Don't worry, you won't lose the money. You won't lose reputation. You won't lose family. Everything will be okay. Avram Avinu didn't build a Mizbeach for that. He built a Mizbeach when he got to Eretz Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him in Shechem, L'zaracha et teines ha'aretz hazos. By the way, that's a riddle. If anybody ever asks you, where is the first place in the whole Torah where the Ribono Shel Olam said the land belongs to you? It's in Shechem, this week's Parsha. The Ribono Shel Olam appears to Avram, and he says, this land is yours. L'zaracha teines ha'aretz hazos. Vayiven sham mizbeach Hashem hanireh elov. And then Avram Avinu built the Mizbeach to thank Hashem for revealing himself to him and for promising him Eretz Yisrael. So there are two things happening here, basically, what Bleiv Yitzchak says. First of all, in chutz la'aretz, the blessing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him was he's not going to lose anything. When he got to Shechem, the Ribono Shel Olam said, I'm giving, forget about not losing anything, I'm giving you Eretz Yisrael. Avram Avinu builds a Mizbeach for the news that first of all, he's going to have children, l'zaracha, and he's going to get Eretz Yisrael. Now he's going to build a Mizbeach because it's not just about losing. I'm not going to lose anything, but here it's because I'm going to gain. And here he builds a Mizbeach. And then Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev says that a special thing happened to Avram in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, Avram learned that this idea, l'zaracha et teines ha'aretz, to your children I will give this land. A nation will be built in this land. A nation that will serve Hashem will be built in this land. Avram Avinu learned a tremendous lesson, and we'll read just that the paragraph on the first page of the handout. L'kadesh es hagmaisim hagashmim. This is what we've been talking about in many shiurim this week. A person, a yid, has the ability to elevate his most physical acts in life and make them holy. You sleep, you can get Olam Haba. You eat, you can get Olam Haba. You don't have to be 24/7 the base medrash to get Olam Haba. A person can get Olam Haba by being Oived Hashem b'chol drochecha da'eyu. That's what we read famous at b'chol drochecha da'eyu, that the Gemara says that in Brachas, and Av Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, Bar Kapara said that there's a small phrase in the Torah, in Nach, that Kol Gufei Torah Tluyim Bo. The whole skeleton, the whole Torah depends upon this phrase. What was the phrase? V'chol drochecha do'eyu. You have to learn how to be an Oved Hashem on every path you take in your life. You're not just an Oved Hashem when you're learning. Be an Oved Hashem when you're eating. Be an Oved Hashem when you're sleeping. Be an Oved Hashem when you take a tiyul. Be an Oved Hashem when you take a vacation. I took a vacation, so I'm not learning. Okay, sometimes people have to take a vacation out of burnout, and they need just to release. And they're going to release, and they're going to come back stronger to learn more and to work more and to be able to give more tzedakah. So the release is Olam Haba. We're humans. We are humans. The Ribono Shel Olam knows what we created. The Ribono Shel Olam knows He's the manufacturer of this thing. He knows what the component parts are. He knows when the component parts need rest. He knows when the component parts are about to burn out. When a person takes care of himself so that he continues, so that tomorrow he can be a better Oved Hashem, Rosh Hashanah understands that. Rosh Hashanah says, Ashtik Olam Haba for you, because you're getting yourself ready for tomorrow. So Rav Weinrod explains the Reb Levi Yitzchak, Benigud Lagishim Avil Ben Pulas Ruchnius, Shebehem Yesh Kedusha Ben Pulas Gashmi Shalas Haguf. In contradistinction to the approach that differentiates between the spiritual aspects of life, davening, learning, doing a mitzvah, versus the physical aspects of a life, eating, drinking, washing, sleeping. One would say that these acts, eating, sleeping, etc., are just mundane. They're completely guf. They're completely physical. Judaism came and taught the world. Mevakeshes lechanech odom lahachtir kedusha gam bepaulas hachulam hamuf hakod shel odom. Judaism came and wants to teach that everything in the world can be made holy. Everything in the world can be used in the service of Hashem. Even eating, sleeping, drinking, getting married, everything is service of Hashem. Then he quotes the Ramchal in the next paragraph. Third paragraph, Shema Tishal, maybe you'll ask, how is it possible a person gets close to Ribono Shalom when he's eating? Hatshuvahi, the answer is, Kipulas Elamis Alas Vahoifos Lamaisa Ruchni, Im Ha'odam Ein Somis Asmed B'Merkaz. If a person stops putting himself in the middle of everything, the whole world is mine. Now, we talked enough about B'Shvili Nivra Olam. A person has to say B'Shvili Nivra Olam, and there are times you need to say that, but the Shvili Nivra Olam can't be Gishvolen. You can't swell it up so that the whole world is yours and no one else exists here. But a person, the B'Shvili Nivra Olam of today, me, I, selfie, obviously is destroying the whole idea of B'Shvili Nivra Olam. A person is able to convert that which is mundane, his eating, his sleeping, his drinking. He can turn that into avodas Hashem when he stops making him the center of the universe. He stops making himself the center of the universe. If he's eating to fill his belly, he's drinking to fill his belly or his throat, he's exercising so that his body looks better, and he's taking a vacation because he wants to be able to enjoy himself, quote unquote, whatever the enjoy may mean. So he's put himself in the center of the universe. Whatever he's doing is for him. And when he's learning, we talked about this week as well, he's learning. We talked about this in Mafkukshi. He's learning. I know more. Kishmak, I know more. I even now know more than my neighbor. Kishmak, I spent the whole night learning, so tomorrow morning when I go to yeshiva, I'm going to know the sugya much better than my chavrusa. I know it better. I know more. I. The I leads to ay. When a person stops putting himself at the center of the universe, and instead he replaces himself with the Ribono Shalom, and he says, I need to eat because I need to serve the Ribono Shalom. I need to sleep because I need to serve the Ribono Shalom. I need to have a healthy body because I need to serve the Ribono Shalom. I need to make sure I don't get corona because I need to serve the Ribono Shalom. So when a person does all these things, he's serving the Ribono Shalom. The bottom paragraph, Yesod HaDvorim Barambam. The foundation of this idea of Reb Levi Yitzchak is in the Rambam. That's what we quote, Hilchos Deis. Hamaver, the Rambam makes clear, Kimut la'odom, and now it's a direct quote from the Rambam. A person is required, Sheyosam aliba sheyeh gufa sholem v'chozer. A person has a requirement. How many times have we talked about today? We talked about the last siman in Shulchan Aruch and Choshen Mishpat about not putting yourself in any danger, and the Ber Hagola there about a person taking care of his physical safety because that's not avodas Hashem. And here we have now a Rambam. The Rambam says a person is required. Sheyosam aliba sheyeh gufa sholem v'chozer. A person has to give special attention that his body should be complete and strong. Kidei shei nafsho yishor l'dasas Hashem, so that his nefesh, his neshama should be straight in order to learn about Hashem. We're not going to go into what nafsha yeshara means, but we understand that when a person is not well, he's sick, he's fadreit, he's confused, he's angry, he's upset. We say he's not thinking straight. When a person wants to be yored l'omka, when a person wants to get into the depths of learning and to the depths of adas tvunos, what does the Ramchal mean here when he's teaching me about how Hashem runs the world? Do I want to understand it superficially? Or do I want to get into it and understand this, because by understanding it's going to help my Amunah to understand that the Baruch Shalom is running the world? Then you have to have a clear mind. And all the things that are going out on there that are chaotic, so it's like a galgal, it's like a catch-22. I see everything out there, it's making me crazy, I'm stressed out, I'm suffering from anxiety, I don't understand what God's doing here. And now, with this clogged up, confused brain, I want to sit down and learn Das Tavunos so that I can understand how God runs the world. So sometimes the Das Tavunos can be a cure for that, so you can begin seeing the world differently. But we understand if a person doesn't have what we call a Seichel Miyushav, Yishuv Hadas, it's called. A person is in a state where he's calm, he's ready to understand, he's ready to listen, he's not thinking about 100 different things. That's a nafsha yeshua das Hashem. When a person is sick, he doesn't feel well, he has a terrible headache, etc., etc., it's hard for him to concentrate on his learning and go into the depths of what he's learning. I understand as well that there's a mantra, and I say these things mantras because people throw these things out without any understanding of their true meaning. I say if someone has a headache, we can understand he can't learn. So someone out there is going to say, what are you talking about? The Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Nun Daled Amid Beis, the Gemara in Eruvin says, Chosh B'Roisha Yasek B'Torah. If you have a headache, you study Torah, and the Torah will make your headache go away. Okay. That's one Chazal in the midst of other Chazals that contradict that Chazal. So you need to understand how they all interact. You want to pick and choose these little pieces of Chazal here and there. Rabbeinu Shalom. Anybody ever see what a Shas looks like? Forget about the Perushim on Shas. Ever see? We're not even going to talk about what a Masif the Shas looks like. Masif the Shas, I think, is 114 volumes. The Masif the Shas is Gemara, and it's a collection of all Rishonim, Achronim in the back. It takes 140. You have to have an Eishes Chayil to let you have such a Shas in your house. 114 volumes. And that is just scratching the surface. So throwing out mantras is meaningless. What does Chosh B'Rosh Yasek B'Torah mean in the context of 8 other Chazals? Put them all together and stop mantraing me. So in order, the Rambam says, and the Rambam's a perfect example of this, his whole Yad HaZokah is to bring all of Shas together under one roof and show you how they all interact. That's the beauty of the Rambam, the ingenuity of the Rambam. Everything is brought together and made consistent. There are kashas on the Rambam, but that's what he wanted to do. No mantra. Don't mantra me. Or you mantra me, you say, you know what? It's okay to go daven in a shul, even if there are people that don't have COVID, not reporting COVID, not testing COVID. It's okay. Shluchei mitzvah in nizaykin. If you're in the middle of doing a mitzvah, God protects you. Rebbeinu Shalom, it's a sugya psachim. What are you mantraing me? Did you read the Gemara Psachim? That's not what the Gemara Psachim says. It doesn't say that. There's a whole sugya there. But people have these sayings. I forgot there's a Hebrew word for this. Pitgamim. They have pitgamim. They have pitgamim for every event in life. Gam zulatoiv. Komada rachmolatav. Torah magno matzla. Shluchei mitzvah in zaykin. Chosh b'rosh yasek b'Torah. And they throw these things at you and you say, wow, he's quoting Gemara, must be right. Okay. So the Rambam says here that there is a requirement that a person pay attention to his body, that it be complete and strong so that he should have a straight brain to understand God. Even when he's sleeping, if a person goes to sleep so that he can rest his brain, and he rests his body so that he shouldn't get weak or sick. A person goes to sleep because he wants to have a strong body. He shouldn't get sick. Because Hashem, he gets sick, he can't be Na'aved Hashem. Nimtzis Hashena Shaloi Avoida LaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a quote from the Rambam. This is not a Hasidic quote about Avodas Hashem. It's a quote from the Rambam. It is Avodas Hashem to go to sleep for the sake of keeping a healthy body. So you can be an Na'aved Hashem. You're going to get Olam Haba for the time you slept for this purpose. I put on a mask. Whoever puts on a mask, L'Shem Shemayim. I want to keep myself healthy, and I want to keep someone else healthy. Not only am I keeping myself healthy, a mitzvah and a requirement, I'm trying to help others stay healthy. I don't want to go into masks, whatever it is. This is a premise of Yiddishkeit. We don't only serve Hashem in the shul and in the Beis Medrash. We serve Hashem 24/7, even when we're asleep. And this is a message that only Jews brought to the world. And this is the message that Avraham Avinu learned in Eretz Yisrael. He came to Eretz Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, here, this is where you're going to build a family, a nation. In this physical land, Avraham Avinu, we're going to create a people of spirituality. We're going to create a holy people. So Avraham Avinu could have looked up at Hashem and said, Hashem, you're going to create a holy people? Maybe take me up to heaven. Let's build this place in heaven. Here on earth, you're going to build something holy? Rabbi say, you need to know that Avraham Avinu saw Noach. There's a cheshbon, it's clear cheshbon. Noach died in the year 2006. Avraham Avinu was born in 1948. Hebrew 1948, but the year 1948 seems to be important. Avraham Avinu was born in 1948. When Avraham Avinu died, when Noach died, Avraham Avinu was 58. The Gemara tells us that Avraham Avinu saw Noach and they spoke about the marble. Avraham Avinu, Baruch comes to Avraham Avinu and says, here on planet Earth, we're going to make a holy people from you, holy nation, in this country here, this Eretz, we're going to make a holy place. Avraham Avinu didn't say to Baruch Shalom, I spoke to Noach. I know what human beings are capable of. I just escaped Ur Kasdim. I just got out of Ur Kasdim. The place is full of Avodah Zarah. I had to destroy my father's Avodah Zarah shop. They threw me into a fire. Thank God you saved me from the fire. My brother Haran died in the fire. Rebbeinu Shalom, you want to create such a holy system? How about bring me up to Shemayim? Doesn't say that. There's a whole new thing happening here. Forget the marble, forget everything. Avraham Avinu here on planet Earth. We're going to lift up planet Earth through this place, Eretz Yisrael. We're going to lift up the rest of the world through what you do here in Eretz Yisrael. So what does Avraham Avinu do? He builds a mizbeach out of physical stone. And then what does he do? He brings a carbon. What's a carbon? Taking a physical animal and making a physical animal, an animal. And he makes a physical animal holy and offers it to the Rebbeinu Shalom. This is why Avraham Avinu, Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, does this in Shechem. He does this in Shechem because all the brachas he got in Chutz La'aretz, first of all, were about not losing your money, not losing your reputation, not losing your family. And suddenly he came to Eretz Yisrael and he now has blessings about not losing things, but about gaining things. Eretz Yisrael, a beautiful family, an Am Kadosh. And what is he here now? That this land here is going to be a place from which a whole new lesson is going to be learned to the world. These people, my children, and this area, my land, is going to be the place from which will emanate a whole new hashkafa. Eating, drinking, sleeping, getting married is holy and is navodas Hashem. That lesson came here from Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, in that place, Avraham Avinu built a mizbeach, and to show he understood the message, he built a physical mizbeach, took an animal and made the animal holy to show you can elevate even the most mundane into holy. That lesson was taught here in Eretz Yisrael. Avraham Avinu learned it here in Eretz Yisrael, and here in Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people send out that message to the rest of the world. All those Yidden need Yeshua, Shav Yeshuas, all the Yidden need before Shav Refuas, before Shalem, Moshe Zelig, Ben Razel, and L'chol Chayli Akarena. Besides Shachal Yisrael, all Yidden need Nechamas Shav Nechamas, all Yidden Brach Shav Brachas, Brachas Yeshuas, Nechamas Refuas can only come through the Boina Shalaylam with human Hishtadlus. And the Rebbe Shalom blesses our human Hishtadlus, and he can only bring about that result. And that's the Gilui HaYichud that we bring into our lives. And every person that does more and more and more and more of this work, internalizing this idea that the Rebbeinu Shalom is the Rebbeinu Shalom is the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's the boss. He controls all of this. The corona came from him. The corona will go away when we hear what he has to say and why he brought it here and what he wants us to do to make it leave. That's a Gilui HaYichud. And the more Gilui HaYichud we get to the point where Mashiach comes to finish off the Gilui HaYichud today, Mamish, B'mher Yameinu, so we can all walk together proudly with our Masechta Midas and look at the third Beis Hamikdash and see what parts of the third Beis Hamikdash look like the second Beis Hamikdash that we learned about. And in there we can start looking at the karbonis that will be brought the way we learned about in Masechta Tamid. And we can give the Matzis a shekel that we learned about Masechta Shkolim. Hashem next week we'll make the same Masechta Shkolim. And all of our learning can come to life on the Har HaBayis and the Beis Hamikdash and Her B'Yameinu. It's an unbelievable parsha. If for whatever reason you're not able, you can't, whatever reason you can't do Shnayim Mikra Vecha Targum every week of the year, take the time out this week. Take the time out. It's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. Take the time out. Learn the Chumash. This week's parsha. This week's parsha is about us. Each one of us is in this week's parsha. God said to Avram, leave, go to Eretz Yisrael. And each of us walked in those footsteps to come here. And it's important to read the words of this week's parsha, the promises Hashem made to Avram Avinu, how Avram Avinu got here, the Nisyonos he went through to get here, how he overcame those Nisyonos. We read this. Read it with Rashi, read it with an art scroll, read it with whatever, read the parsha. The parsha is talking about you, Mamish, who have the Sfas Emes and the Zohar HaKadosh is Lech Lecha. You heard the Rebbeinu Shalom say Lech Lecha. If you're here and you left another place to get here, that means that you heard the Lech Lecha and you came. You are an Avram Avinu or Sarah Imenu. Read about them. Everybody have a wonderful day, a wonderful Shabbos. Sei gesund.